OpenAI just dropped GPT-5.3 Codex, and if you have ever watched an AI agent demo and thought, cool, now please don't torch my repo. Same. This isn't about it can do code. We have had that. The real story is the agent loop getting better. Plan, act, check, recover, keep going. Less babysitting, more finish the job. GPT 5.3 Codex is positioned like a merged agent model, not a coding specialist, not just a journal chatbot, one model that can stay in context while it reads code, follow logs, run terminal commands, and then writes the PR description. A tired reviewer can actually scan. That means less swapping tools, less copy pasting, fewer wait why we are doing this again moments. The benchmark looks strong. Swedish Bench Pro at 56.8%, Terminal Bench 2 at 77.3%, OSWorld Verified at 64.7%. Guardrails still matter. OpenAI is tightening safety, especially around cyber and destructive actions. Keep sandboxes on. It requires checkpoints, review differences. Put human approval on anything that can delete, overwrite, or leak. Treat GPT 5.3 Codex like a very fast teammate, not a magic wand. For the full breakdown, read the article on Binaryverse AI. Link is in the description. Now let's jump into the detailed presentation.
You know that feeling? That very specific visceral anxiety you get when you're watching a live AI coding demo?
Oh, I know it well.
The presenter types something, hits go, and suddenly the agent is just tearing through the terminal.
And you're just thinking, please don't break the internet.
Exactly. Your stomach just drops a little. You're sitting there thinking, okay, that is incredibly cool, but please, for the love of everything holy, do not torch my repository.
It's the universal reaction of every developer right now. It's awe mixed with this deep-seated care that it's about to arm ARF your entire life's work because it misunderstood a path variable.
Right. Well, today we are unpacking something that sits right at the center of that feeling. We've got a stack of documentation and some very heated online discussions about the new GPT 5.3 Codex. But before anyone just rolls their eyes and says, great, another model that writes code, just hold on. Because looking at these sources, that really isn't the story here.
No, not at all. We crossed the it writes code bridge a long time ago.
We did.
If you're just looking at, like, syntax generation, can it write a Python function for Fibonacci numbers, you're looking at the wrong metric. The real headline here, and it's kind of buried, is this shift to what they're calling the agentic loop.
The agentic loop. It sounds like a plot device from a bad sci-fi movie. Captain, we're stuck in the agentic loop.
It's actually much more mundane, but infinitely more important. It's the boring, unglamorous part of engineering.
Okay.
It's where a model plans a task, executes a step, checks its own work, recovers if it messes up, which it will, and just keeps going. That loop is the difference between a fancy autocomplete and a system that can actually do a job.
And that's the promise of this 5.3 release, right? It's trying to answer a really practical question. Can one model handle the coding and all that messy stuff around it? The setup, the debugging?
The why is production on fire, detective work. And without forcing you to context switch every 10 minutes. That's the goal.
So we have a lot to get through. We're going to walk through the article's breakdown of what's changed, look at the benchmarks, and maybe why you should be a little suspicious of them. And finally, how to use this without, deleting your database.
Safety first.
Always.
Okay, let's start with that first big heading in the source material. GPT 5.3 Codex in one paragraph. If we had to sum this up, what are we really looking at?
Think of it as a merged agent model. So in the past, you usually had this harsh split. You had models that were like elite coders, great at syntax, knew every library, but they were terrible at general reasoning.
Right.
And then you had models that were great thinkers, but would hallucinate API calls that don't even exist.
So you were constantly toggling between a genius idiot and a charismatic liar.
That is a harsh, but a pretty fair way to put it, yeah. GPT 5.3 Codex is the attempt to bridge that gap. It combines that strong coding performance with broader reasoning and professional knowledge work.
So it's less, Here's a snippet of code, good luck, and more, finish the job. Exactly. The source material really highlights that this is built for engineers, SREs, data folks, even PMs, people who live in tickets and terminals. The shift is away from a model that just answers a prompt to one that can handle the messiness of actual work.
And work is messy. I think that's what the glossy demos always miss. It's never just write a function that sorts a list.
Never.
It's figure out why this library version conflicts with that one, update the dependency, and oh, by the way, the docs for this haven't been touched since 2023.
Precisely. And that brings us right to the biggest risk they identify in this section. Overtrust. When a model gets this good at handling the mess, you're tempted to just let it run.
And that's how you get accidental destructive actions.
That's it. We'll get to safety protocols later, but the headline benefit is handling complexity, and the headline risk is complacency.
Okay, moving on to the next section. What changed Visa's GPT-5.3-Codex? The report calls this a merged model shift. You said it's a product-level change, not just a benchmark bump. Why does that matter to someone staring at a Jira ticket right now?
It matters because of the workflow. I mean, in earlier setups, with 5.2, you had to choose your weapon. You'd reach for a coding specialist when the patch was really critical. But then, the moment the task got ambiguous, or you needed to draft a PR description a human could understand, that specialist model would just fall apart. You'd have to swap.
And that's where the context switching kills you. You're copying and pasting error logs, re-explaining the problem.
And hoping the new model doesn't forget why you started. It's exhausting. And expensive, cognitively speaking. This merge is all about reducing that. You don't swap. You keep the context.
The text also mentions a change in tempo. That phrase jumped out at me.
Yes, it's about the duration of the task. The system card for this thing actually describes the intent as supporting long-running tasks. It's designed to do research, use tools, and crucially, accept steering while it works. It's not a sprint. It's more like a middle-distance run.
Which naturally leads us to the next heading in our analysis, why this release is significant. Let's drill down on those agentic loops.
Right. It all comes down to something the paper calls loop hygiene.
Loop hygiene? That sounds like something my dentist would yell at me about. What does that actually mean in practice?
It's crucial. Ask yourself this. Can the model take a vague objective, make a plan, execute a step, and then, this is the key, notice that the world has changed because of that step, and keep going without spiraling into chaos?
Because that's what usually happens, right? It tries something, gets an error, and then panics. Or it hallucinates a fix, applies it, gets another error.
And spirals down into madness.
Yeah,
that's a hygiene failure. Just creates a mess you have to clean up.
Yeah.
This model is optimized for longer horizons. It's built to try, verify, and adjust. And the quiet win here, according to the article, is steerability.
I liked the analogy the source used here. It's like having a teammate. You'd rather have a competent teammate who tells you what they're doing so you can correct them than some genius who locks the door and solves the completely wrong problem.
That is the perfect distinction. A model that narrates its choices lets you be the manager, not the babysitter. It's a subtle shift, but it changes everything.
Okay, let's talk numbers. The next section covers the benchmark snapshot. People love numbers, but the source material comes with a massive warning label here.
A huge warning label. Think of benchmarks like Microscope slides. They show you something real, sure, but only under very specific conditions. If you think higher score equals better for my messy legacy code base, you are falling right into a trap.
So the headline numbers, SWE-Bench Pro at 56.8%, Terminal Bench 2.0 at 77.3%, OSWorld Verified at 64.7%. Let's break these down. Why is SWE-Bench Pro the big deal here, not just verified?
That's a really important nuance. SWE-Bench Verified is a good benchmark, don't get me wrong, but it's pretty narrow. SWE-Bench Pro is broader. It's designed to be contamination resistant.
Contamination resistant.
It basically means the model hasn't just memorized the answers from its training data. Pro covers multiple languages, a harder variety of tasks. It stops the model from just regurgitating a solution it saw on GitHub.
So it's closer to the reality of a polyglot code base.
Exactly. Most of us aren't working in a clean, single-language sandbox. Pro gets closer to that messy reality where you have Python scripts gluing together a React front end and a Go back end.
Okay, what about those vendor charts we see all over social media, the ones where every company's model is crushing everyone else's?
The vendor charts. Look, there are so many hidden variables. How much scaffolding was used?
Define scaffolding.
Scaffolding is all the code wrapped around the model to help it succeed. Was there a custom agent wrapper that caught errors and re-prompted it? Did it get to browse the web for docs? How many retries did it get?
Ah, so it's not a level playing field.
Not at all. A model getting a high score with 10 retries and tons of help is very different from one getting it 0 shot. My advice, and the source's advice, is to trust benchmarks as trend lines. They tell you the direction of travel, but don't treat them like a shopping receipt.
One trend line that's definitely going up, and honestly this caught my eye the most, is in the next section. Terminal Bench 2.0. The source calls this the real unlock.
This is where code generation stops being a parlor trick. Terminal skills are foundational. And we're not just talking about knowing what grep does.
Right, it's about actually using it.
It's about running commands, interpreting the output, chaining steps, and recovering. The score jumped from 64% to over 77%. That is a massive gap in AI terms.
So what does that 13% jump actually mean for a developer on a Tuesday morning?
It's the difference between it helps sometimes and it runs a reliable loop. In practice, it means bootstrapping environments without spending 2 hours yak shaving.
Oh, the dreaded Yak Shave. When you start trying to install a package and end up updating your entire operating system 3 hours later.
Exactly. It means debugging dependency issues, grepping logs to find the error. It's all the unsexy work that takes up 60% of our time. If the model can handle the terminal, it can handle the environment. And if it can handle the environment, it can actually build things.
The source also mentioned wrappers here. How does that apply to daily use?
This is crucial. Agent wrappers are these hidden performance multipliers. A good wrapper prevents the model from spiraling. It says, whoa, you failed this test twice. Stop and ask for help.
A bad wrapper.
Well, it just gives the model a loaded keyboard and vibes.
Loaded keyboard and vibes is going to be the name of my next bed.
It's a dangerous combination. You do not want a model executing terminal commands based on vibes.
Let's move to the next heading, which sounds boring but pays the bills. Token efficiency.
The hidden superpower. It's the least sexy metric, but it is so impactful.
So fewer tokens for the same job. Why does it matter besides saving a few cents on the API bill?
Well, think about how these models work. Fewer tokens means the model is compressing its reasoning, it's getting to the point faster, it's asking you fewer tell me more questions.
So it's less chatty, more actionable?
And that has a human impact? Lower cost, sure, but also faster iteration, latency wins, and fewer interruptions. If the agent can just get on with a plan without asking you to restate the ticket every 5 minutes, that feels like a much better teammate.
There's that teammate dynamic again. It seems to be the recurring theme of this whole release.
It is. And just like a human teammate, if they're slow and constantly ask you to clarify, you just stop delegating to them. Efficiency builds trust.
Now for the awkward teenage phase of AI, according to the report, OSWorld Verified. This is about actually operating a computer.
It's exciting, but it is definitely awkward. OSWorld measures if a model can look at a desktop, click icons, use a browser, and complete tasks.
And the score is 64.7%. That sounds okay.
It's below the human reference of around 72%, but compared to previous models, it's a huge jump. We're moving from explain the workflow to do the workflow.
What kind of tasks are we talking about here?
Project setup, installations, debugging across an IDE and a browser, all the professional glue tasks.
But this is where safety becomes the #1 conversation.
Right. If I'm letting this thing click around my desktop, I need to know it's not going to drag my home folder to the trash. The sources highlight a specific metric here, destructive action avoidance. GPT-5.3-Codex improved to 0.88 from 0.76. That's good, but it's not 1.0.
So the protocol has to be strict.
Absolutely. The rule is keep approvals on for anything that can delete, overwrite, or leak data. Let the agent propose, I want to delete this directory to clear the cache, but a human has to click accept. Sandboxes are non-negotiable.
Moving on to beyond coding, because software isn't just code, right? It's paperwork. PRDs, changelogs, runbooks.
Surprisingly well, actually. This is where the merged nature of the model really shines. There's a benchmark called GDP-Val for general knowledge work, and 5.3 Codex matches the previous 5.2 scores.
So it didn't get dumber at writing English just because it got better at writing Python.
Exactly. And the implication is you can keep the same model in the loop from the spec to the implementation to the rollout and documentation.
That feels like true adoption, not a flashy demo, but just making a boring daily workflow 10% easier.
And that compounds. That's when it really sticks.
Now, interacting with this thing, the source talks about a Codex app UX shift. It sounds like we're moving away from just a chat box.
Yeah, UX is a capability now. The focus is on frequent updates, multi-agent supervision, but steering is the skill the user really needs to learn.
Okay, so how do I steer this thing safely? What are the management tips?
First, start with acceptance tests. Don't just ask for code. make the agent run the test. Second, require checkpoints. Don't let it go dark for an hour. Third, prefer patches over rewrites.
Oh, that's a good one. Don't let it rewrite the whole file just to fix one function.
Right. Models love to rewrite because it's easier for them, but it creates these massive, risky diffs. And finally, ask what changed and why before you merge. Make it explain itself.
Despite all this, there are trust issues. That's the next heading. The internet has been, let's call it, skeptical.
As it should be. The memes are healthy. Skepticism about self-reported numbers is valid.
The source suggests a boring fix for this skepticism, a checklist.
Yeah. If you really want to know if this works for you, run your own evils. But use repo scale tasks. Don't use toy prompts like write a snake game. Use real issues from your backlog, require CI runs, and measure time to fix and cost to fix.
And watch out for the tricks.
Yeah.
The report warns about specific behaviors.
Oh, the tricks. Prompt gaming, where it follows the letter of the prompt but violates the spirit. Silent scope changes. And my personal nightmare, regression loops.
What's a regression loop?
That's where the agent fixes a failing test by disabling the test.
That is technically a solution.
It turns the red light off. But it's not what you want. You have to watch the diffs. This is why we say manager, not babysitter, but a very alert manager.
Let's pivot to the serious side of this, cybersecurity. OpenAI is treating this one differently.
They are. They've classified this as high capability in cybersecurity, which triggers a whole different set of safety protocols for them.
And there's this Trusted Access for Cyber program.
Right. It's for defenders and pen testers. It gives them access to high-risk capabilities for legitimate work, but with heavy monitoring. It's an acknowledgement that these tools are dual use. They can fix vulnerabilities or they can find them.
So for the average builder listening, what are the defaults they should stick to?
Treat safety like reliability. Sandbox is on, least privileged credentials, don't give the agent your root keys. And again, human approval for destructive actions.
Okay, we're nearing the end of the analysis and we have a comparison. GPT-5.3-Codex vs. Opus 4.6. How do we make the call between them?
It really comes down to task shape, not just vibes. If you are doing long-running agentic coding, lots of terminal work, tool chaining, go with GPT-5.3-Codex. It's built for that, Luke. It handles the environment better.
And Opus?
If you need pure reasoning write-ups, deep analysis, narrative explanations. Opus 4.6 often shines when the work is mostly thinking and writing, rather than doing and executing.
What about high-stakes changes in a repo you don't know well?
Honestly, either can work as long as you have your guardrails up. In that scenario, the process matters more than the model. But Codex might have the edge if you need it to trace dependencies across a bunch of files.
So let's wrap this up. We've gone through the architecture, the benchmarks, safety, skepticism. What's the main takeaway here?
Treat GPT 5.3 Codex like a very fast teammate. That's the mental model. It's not a magic wand. It's a junior to mid-level engineer who types at light speed but needs supervision.
And like any teammate, it needs clear instructions.
Give it crisp acceptance criteria, a safe sandbox, a tight feedback loop. If you do that, you get compounding speed. But if you give it vague goals and unchecked power, you're just going to get stories about how you spent your weekend restoring a database.
And nobody wants those stories.
Definitely not.
So here's our challenge to you. Don't just take our word for it, and definitely don't take the vendor charts for it. Try it on one real task from your backlog today. Not a toy problem, a real ticket. Ship something small and measure the loop.
That's how this actually changes things. Iteration.
And I want to leave you with a thought from the source material that really stuck with me. If the goal of all this is to steal back an hour of your week by managing an agent, if your job shifts from writing the code to supervising the loop, how does that change the fundamental definition of what it means to be a developer?
It's a question we're all going to have to answer pretty soon.
Something to mull over while you're reviewing those diffs. Thanks for listening. We'll catch you next time.